Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here. Welcome back to another Cardano video. So today I've got a guest on that I've wanted to have on the channel for a while now, Sebastian. He's very well known, I would say, within the Cardano community. Founder of DC Spark, previously Emergo, Milkomeda as well. So Sebastian, I'll let you give the introduction to who you are. And I'll tell people this is our second take because I messed up my mic and my proper camera went dead. So bad technical day, but thanks to Sebastian for sticking around. So I'll let you give the introduction to who you are.
Yeah, so my name is Sebastian. I'm CTO and co-founder of DC Spark, which is a crypto ecosystem builder company. And the goal of our company was to basically, unlike a lot of companies that are focused on a single project, like a DEX company or an NFT marketplace company, we wanted to have a holistic company that tackles all the different kinds of problems that exist in blockchain. And so we do core protocol development and CIPs for Cardano. We also have products like Flint Wallet, and we also want to expand into layer twos and off-chain, for example, Milkomeda, which is a layer two for Algorand and also a sidechain for Cardano.
Great. So, and I'll say to people as well, I expect us to cover lots of different topics. So I'll put timestamps down below for people who want certain parts of it. And there'll be some people who will want it all, some will want certain topics. So we'll start with Milkomeda. It's behind you. And to put things in perspective before we get into it, just to give a high level of what a layer one is versus a layer two and sidechain, and so people have an understanding of what that is.
Yeah, for sure. So if you think about Cardano, it's a network that is synchronized between all the stake pools, right? And currently we have, maybe 2,000, 3,000 stake pools. And so the larger Cardano is, the harder it is for these stake pools to exist. They need to buy stronger machines, more memory, more CPU, more hard disk, right? And so we want to keep Cardano as easy to set up, as easy to synchronize as possible. We cannot easily do this if we turn Cardano into like this huge machine that runs thousands of transactions per second. Is kind of against the idea of keeping it small and easy to run. And so what people have been trying to do in the blockchain space for years is to keep layer ones thin and small while still somehow supporting the large transactions per second requirement that a lot of applications require. There's a lot of different ways this can be done. One of the historical ways to do this is called a sidechain. Now, a sidechain is basically the same as a regular blockchain, except it does not have kind of its own independent community. It's like a blockchain that inherits the community from somewhere else. So, for example, the Milkomeda sidechain for Cardano is its own blockchain, but obviously it's very closely connected to the Cardano community. There's no new token for it; it just uses ADA as the base asset, but it has its own kind of security properties. Now, what we want for Milkomeda is to advance to become a layer two. Now, a layer two basically inherits the security properties of the base chain. So it does not exist beside it, does not leech off it. It adds to the base security properties of the main chain. And this is really what we want for a blockchain like Cardano, because Cardano is one of, if not the most, the safest kind of layer one blockchain out there. And so we want to build a system that adds EVM functionality without sacrificing the amazing security properties of the base Cardano layer. And so that's the problem we're trying to solve with Milkomeda. Now, of course, this, as you can imagine, is kind of large and long research agenda. And so Milkomeda C1 deployment for Cardano is kind of the first step. We have a second step that was released on the Algorand testnet fairly recently. That's the first proof of concept for our layer 2 deployment. And we'll get that deployed to the Algorand mainnet afterwards. And then once Cardano has all the functionality required to support layer 2s, we'll be happy to deploy this technology to Cardano as well and help grow the space by adding EVM support to Cardano and possibly other programming languages in the future as well.
Nice. I think that's a very good summary of the L1s, L2 sidechains as well. Obviously, there's a lot more technical detail we could go into, but we'll keep this as high as possible. And maybe we'll do a follow-up someday if people are interested in the more finer details on how things work. But with something like Milkomeda and being on Algo and being on Cardano now, it opens up cross-chain possibilities as well for projects like bridges. Lots of talk on should you use bridges, should you not use them. So something like this, having the same framework there, could open up possibilities across chain as well.
Yeah, for sure. We've had a lot of success in Milkamita with outreach to other ecosystems. There's been other ecosystems for example, Cosmos that have reached out to us, other ecosystems in Ethereum that have reached out to us. And obviously we're hoping to, use this technology to bridge the gap between Algorand and Cardano as well, because a lot of the projects that have deployed on the Milkmaid deployment for Cardano have seen, some traction there, and now they want to take their success to the Algorand blockchain as well, which also has, a philosophically similar community. So it's been great to see the amount of people interested in the R&D work that we're doing at Milkamita and come on this journey with us.
Yeah, that's great to see. And like John moved across to Algo as well. It's a chain that it's one that I really do want to dive deeper into when I get a chance as well, because I've heard that before about similarities between them. So hopefully I'll be able to dive into that a bit more. Maybe when Vassal and everything like that calms down and we don't have as much going on, I'll have a bit more time for that. But so future will be roll-ups, and that's what you have on Algo right now is roll-ups. And across the industry, roll-up seems to be the way a lot of chains want to go, or how can you explain again, just on a high level, roll-up, what roll-ups are, why everybody seems to be going towards them?
Yeah, so I can describe it another way that I think will help you get the whole kind of layer 2 ecosystem really well understood. So basically, there's a trade-off between security and flexibility. So side chains are the most flexible, but the least secure, right? Most flexible because you can have a different proof of concept or proof of stake algorithm. You can have different proof of work algorithm. You can do whatever you want. You can have a different programming language. You can do, whatever changes you want to do, and you're good to go. So it has the most flexibility, but it's the least secure because it's a standalone blockchain, as I mentioned earlier. So it needs its own validator set that manage the protocol. On the complete other side of the spectrum, you have something called ZK rollups, which uses zero-knowledge cryptography to basically summarize the result of executions and compress those into a small chunk of data that you can upload to for example, Cardano blockchain. And then just by looking at these small compressed chunks of data, you can know the states of the layer 2 and get full security that this is the true state of this layer 2 network. And so, this means that the zero-knowledge cryptography approach has the most safety, but it's the least flexible. Because if you've ever looked into ZK rollups or just zero-knowledge cryptography in general, this is still an area of very heavy R&D. There's new and better versions of it that come out every year. There's no good way to update these protocols. And also, it's very hard to implement complex systems in these protocols. So, for example, writing a zero-knowledge compatible version of the EVM has been a project that's been in the works by many companies for a few years now, and they're still not quite there. And so this is, the safest approach, but the least flexible. In between, you have something called optimistic rollups, which is basically a way to inherit the security from the block production side with a restriction that you have to have the same virtual machine. That is to say, you are safer than a sidechain because now you're inheriting the security of the layer 1, but you're stuck with the same virtual machine as layer 1. And the reason this is the case is because optimistic rollups work on a concept called fraud proofs. Okay, so the way an optimistic rollup works is that you take the state of your layer 2 and you add this data to the layer 1, similar to the ZK rollup. But now instead of having a cryptographic proof that the data is correct, you instead say that if the data is incorrect, anybody can call out and say if the data is incorrect, and would do what is called a fraud proof and say like, hey, I think this piece of data is incorrect, and here's why it's incorrect. The tricky part is that proving why it's incorrect means that you need to take the computation that happened on layer 2 and recalculate it on the layer 1. And to be able to recalculate this, you need to have the same virtual machine. So, for example, for Cardano, we have Plutus and we don't have Solidity. So if somebody has an optimistic rollup that's running Solidity, they can't easily rerun the Solidity contract on Cardano because Cardano does not support Solidity. So optimistic rollups give you, the inheriting of the security of layer 1 like you want, but have this trade-off that you have to have the same virtual machine. What we're trying to do with Milkamita is come up with something in between a sidechain and an optimistic rollup. So we still inherit the security properties of the layer 1, but we allow for switching the virtual machine to something else. And this is exactly what we need for Algorand or for Cardano, where we want to inherit the securities of these, large and safe blockchains while switching out the virtual machine from Plutus or AVM to EVM.
Okay. Thanks for that. So I might even cut that into smaller sections to be able to put out for people as well who are looking for that type of information. So as well actually, before we get off, IOG came out and mentioned an EVM chain as well, but haven't heard much on that since the announcement that it was going to be there. But where does that fit into sidechain or L2 or?
Yeah, and so the difference between Milkamita and Mamba is actually these two technologies complement each other. So Milkamita is about inheriting the security of the layer 1 and allowing you to switch the virtual machine. So you could have an EVM version of Milkamita. In the future, we could have something that uses MoveVM or SwayVM or these other, or sorry, FieldVM or these other popular virtual machines for blockchains while inheriting the security of layer 1. Whereas Mamba is about how to easily spin up sidechains for Cardano that, instead of inheriting the security property of the layer 1 directly, reuse the validator set. So if you're stake pool on Cardano, you can elect to become a stake pool on this other sidechain. The fact that Mamba works on the sidechain front gives them flexibility, because you can spin up a sidechain that has totally different rules from Cardano, works totally separately. And there's a lot of times where this is the use case you want, and so they're covering a different kind of use case. Now, obviously, there's some overlap, and we'll see some dApps deploy on both once they release at some point in the future. They don't have a date as far as I know, but I hope this kind of helps you understand how these two projects are both connected and complement each other.
Yeah, I've seen the announcement. It's a while back now, the last we've seen of it, but I haven't heard anything since on it, or haven't seen dates or anything like that. So DC Spark does a lot more than Milkamita. So you have Flint Wallet. You're personally very involved in the SIP process improvements for Cardano. So do you want to jump into some of that? I suppose start with Flint Wallet anyway. You had a big update in the last week.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the idea of DC Spark was not to be a single product or a single project company, but really try and focus on the full end-to-end pipeline. And from that, we wanted to work on CIPs and core improvements to the protocol, but we also need something to guide us, right? It's very hard to improve the protocol in a vacuum, because then you don't know what are the requirements, what do people really need, what will help really drive the ecosystem forward. And so Flint Wallet is a wallet that we've been developing that helps guide us from the tooling side. When we work on Flint Wallet, it's like, oh, wouldn't it be great if Cardano had this? Wouldn't it be great if Cardano had this? And then we pass that along into Cal's proposals and the DC Spark tooling team, who help implement these improvements to the core protocol and bring these projects to life. So multiple SIPs have come out this way, and a lot of projects have come out this way, such as the Cardano multi-platform lib, which is a REST SDK for Cardano used by many projects, and also CARP, which is a Postgres SQL indexer for Cardano. So basically, with these two projects that we've been developing at DC Spark, you can create easy indexers for Cardano that basically take the data from the Cardano blockchain and turn it into something that's easy for websites, dApps to parse. And then now that you have the data available, you can use the REST SDK we wrote to then actually act on that data. For example, run some transaction building API, or mint some NFT, or these other kinds of common use cases. And so we had a large update to Flint, which actually moves Flint away from a previous tool called Cardano DB Sync that was written by IOTK to our new backend called CARP, which is a much more modern system and a much more flexible system than Cardano DB Sync, which was kind of good for its time, but now it's kind of starting to show its age. And CARP was meant to be kind of a fully customizable indexer pipeline, and the fact that we can customize it exactly to what we need for Flint allowed us to have an over 25 times speed improvement for Flint Wallet, as well as drastically reduce our server costs because of all of the optimizations we've been able to do with this custom pipeline.
Nice. Yeah, I've seen a few people who would be more on the dApp side talking about CARP versus DB Sync, and DB Sync is getting bigger all the time. The requirements to run it are getting bigger as well, the servers behind it. So seen a lot of positive feedback on that. And Flint as well, is that going to be a cross-chain wallet in the future, or
yeah,
it's not
sure.
just going to be Cardano?
Yeah, we plan to add Milk support, and ideally would have Flint support all the different Milk chains, the Milk deployments. Obviously, it's hard to balance the growth of the Milk side of things versus also trying to build out the Cardano blockchain at the same time. And so we try and split our efforts a bit in between. But I think we've done a good job of growing the Milk side of things, but also growing out Cardano at the same time. And we hope that Flink continues to help give us clear guidance in that vision, as well as, of course, being a good product in its own right. And right now we have maybe 30,000 users on Flint, so a decent number of people are enjoying it as well.
Yeah, I suppose a lot of people are familiar with MetaMask, and I see similarities in how they work. And lots of people want to just use one wallet, but MetaMask, I don't know if it will ever use Cardano. So Flint could be the one in the future for people who want cross-chain wallets. So the SIP process, then we're really jumping through lots of different things, but the SIP process is something you're personally very involved in. And for anyone not familiar with it, how the improvement proposals work, can you give them the intro to that?
Yeah, for sure. So Cardano is a decentralized ecosystem, but that means that we need to figure out, what kind of features should we prioritize next. It's not just up to IOHK to decide, okay, this is what's going to be included. We need to have, chat as a community about, what will be included, how will it be included, and really, go through that decision process with the whole community. And the CIP process really is what drives that discussion. Now, of course, at DC Spark, we've made many proposals to the CIP process, and we have, for example, for Vassal, we were involved in the CIPs for reference inputs and some of the other Vassal CIPs, and we have some CIPs as well for future hard forks that we think will help improve Cardano. But it's not just us, and it's not just IOHK, who have also submitted a lot of CIPs as well. There's also a lot of communities and community projects that have submitted CIPs as well. So, for example, iMaker has submitted some CIPs. Berrypool, Alessandro from Nami has also submitted some CIPs. So everybody's kind of pitching in their own way to help drive the protocol forward and help introduce the protocol changes they need to, deliver more features to their users.
Yeah, I liked what I've seen over the last year, and that there's a lot more people getting involved in putting forward what should be included in the development updates. And it's not just IOG deciding what goes in and what happens and everything like that. Like Vassal is mainly the SIPs that are there to enable a lot of the more complex DeFi to launch on Cardano. So it's great to see the evolution there as well. Like we're not where we want to be just yet, but we're moving along the path. I suppose at times you've had to be the voice of reason, not what everyone wants to hear all the time in the community but you've had the reality of where we actually are because you have the technical knowledge to know where we are. So where do you think Cardano is now? Are we on the right path, or are we getting there? I think we're in a lot better position now than we were a year ago. Well, what's your own opinion on that?
Yeah, so as everybody has seen by now, that blockchains are very large and complex software, and it always takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to get where we want. And so Ethereum has taken years to get to where they are today, and they still have a huge amount of work left to do. And so it's unavoidable that for us as well, we have a competitive blockchain at the moment, but of course there's always more work to be done. I think there's a lot of interesting things coming down the pipeline. Obviously, the Vassal hard fork, which may be live by the time this video goes out, is obviously super exciting because it allows reference inputs, which allows composability of dApps on Cardano that has not been possible in the past, where right now dApps on Cardano are all kind of siloed in their own way. And I think we have some exciting proposals in the CIP pipeline. For example, we have proxy contracts that will not only allow composing backwards to dApps, but also composing into the future with dApps. So increasing the composability of smart contracts on Cardano to really build out a large and robust DeFi ecosystem that's interconnected. There's also exciting proposals like input endorsers, which I think is very novel research that IOHK is doing. There's some similarity to research work done in Ethereum called PBS, but the way that they're approaching the problem is very different from Cardano. And so Cardano chain continues to push out some very novel research and approaches to a lot of the blockchain problems. There's a lot of new things that we need to tackle in the Cardano roadmap that I think are not quite addressed yet. For example, this data availability problem that I mentioned earlier in this video, which is how layer 2s essentially get powered on various blockchains, is through a concept called data availability. And Cardano right now is not a great blockchain for data availability, if I'm being honest. But the Vassal hard fork, actually one of the features included in that, will actually make this a lot better, and we'll obviously have to think about as a community, how we want to continue to improve these data availability solutions on Cardano, because these will be required for import endorsers. It will be required for Mithril, for Orbis, for Milkomita, for a large amount of projects on the Cardano blockchain to really take their products to the next level. And so I think this is going to be one of the kind of large R&D problems that we have to take on in the future.
Great. I suppose the fact that you have the knowledge to understand all of it, and even though you put out the things to say what we need at times, the fact you're building solid companies within the ecosystem speaks a lot for itself, and that you don't plan on going anywhere. If you really thought there was big issues, you wouldn't be sticking around. So that says a lot that you're building the foundations here as well. So
yeah, and I think it's really important to have a builder culture in Cardano. And I think right now, if you think about how Cardano started, it was obviously started in a federated system. There's IHK, Emergo, and Cardano Foundation, and they decided, what will happen going next. And whenever an issue came up, is okay, let's get the three of us together and decide, how we're going to proceed. And obviously, this created kind of a defensive culture in Cardano, where whenever something happens, you look to these three entities to decide what happens next. And now that we've had Shelly and we've had Alonzo, we're a very decentralized ecosystem now, and we need to move away from this kind of defensive culture to an open culture where we invite builders to come to Cardano, try stuff out, complain about what's going wrong, and then we look at these complaints and then try and act upon it. And I think this is very visible in chains like Solana and Ethereum. And despite the fact that these chains have these horrible issues that everybody is very familiar with, builders continue to go there and build stuff because they easily go on these platforms, see some issues, and think, hey, that's a real issue, but I think I can tackle this, and they hop onto that and get involved. And I think this is a culture that we need to help grow more in Cardano, and that's the kind of culture that I try and encourage and build. And not everybody likes the way I go about it, but I think this is kind of a necessary shift in the way that the Cardano community is structured to really become more open and become more embracing to engineers to come on board and play around.
Yeah, I think it's the tough love kind of thing at times, where you have to be hard at times for the long-term good of the chain, like where everyone wants it to get to. Sometimes we need this type of thing, and we need more and more people to be coming in, more people who understand the issues and who are in developing. And look, when different projects, I suppose some of the SIPs came about when DeFi projects tried to build on Cardano and realized we don't have this, we don't have that, like the reference inputs and stuff like that weren't thought of at the time when we thought DeFi was going to launch with smart contracts and things like that. The more developers that come in that try and build different types of applications, we're going to see different, we'll call them issues, but if they're discussed in the right way, solutions can be found, and long term we can build the solutions and build out the ecosystem around them as well. So Catalyst is one way as well for projects and stuff to build on Cardano, get funding through that. You guys have had a few different proposals in the past. You've open sourced a lot of what you've done. Where are you at the minute? Do you have any for, is it Fund 10?
Yeah.
Or 9?
Yeah, Fund 9 is the next round. We have quite a few proposals in this round as well. We want to continue building out the Cardano ecosystem. I think two kind of repeating themes in our proposals have been improving the indexer situation for Cardano and also improving the SDKs for Cardano. And so CARP, as I mentioned earlier in this video, is this new indexer we introduced for Cardano. And a lot of projects have been hopping onto it. In fact, we passed 50 stars on GitHub, which is quite a milestone for us only a week or two ago. So it's been seeing great adoption. But obviously, we need to continue building on this and continue adding more features. So we're asking for more funding in this indexer category. But actually, another project that kind of I think is really important personally is trying to continue to improve the correctness of the SDKs on Cardano. So one of the main visions and goals and philosophies of Cardano has been a specification-driven development. We take the specifications and then we write code that matches the specifications that we wrote. Now, one thing that would be even better than this is generating code directly from the specification. And this is a project that we've been working on for multiple years at this point to get to where we are. And it hasn't been like a super well-funded thing. It's been some of my personal money, from some DC Sparks personal money, some amount of Catalyst funding here and there as well. We have more proposals, and in this coming Fund 9 to really continue building out generation of Cardano SDKs based off the specification. In fact, by the time this video comes out, I'm not sure when it will come out, we may actually have a demo of the version 2 of our code generation tool that we're going to be releasing. And I think when you see this video, you're going to be like blown away. Obviously, to maintain expectations, there's a lot of features we don't support yet. But I think this will be really exciting to help Cardano projects easily create SDKs that they can just push out there, get easily indexed, and get integrated in all these projects. And I think it'll be really the next step to security and spec-driven development in Cardano.
Okay, nice. Yeah, and I'll put the links to some of them down below in the description as well if people want to check out the proposals. We're recording on a Wednesday. I plan to have this out by this weekend. So 2 or 3 days from now, it should be out. And if your own video is out, I'll put that link below, or I'll share it on social media when it is out as well. So we kind of jumped through lots of different topics there. Is there any other area you feel would be good to talk about, or anything that we've kind of missed out on?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to also spend some time to just talk about, where we want to grow in the Milk Meta side of things. So yeah. Milk Meta, as you may have seen, has had some traction in the DeFi space. We've had multiple exchanges, come on board to Milk Meta. We've had multiple, projects that are not DEXs, but still in the DeFi space, like lending platforms. One thing that I really want to try and move towards as well is gaming and DAOs and this kind of social infrastructure. And the reason we think this is super important is because if you look at the Cardano ecosystem, it's very much a retail-driven ecosystem, right? There's some, kind of large players, but mostly it's, a lot of really passionate users, and that's what really has allowed the Cardano community to grow to the size it is today. And so we think that, we could put more effort into, building out the DeFi ecosystem for Milk Meta. But this is probably not, the thing that really matches the most to the current Cardano community. Probably what matches most is retail-focused projects. And I think that's part of the reason we've seen such a huge growth in NFTs on Cardano. Not only was Cardano, from a technology perspective, very well suited for NFTs because of the UTXO model, and also it's a really good match for the Cardano culture. And we think that games is really going to be one of the next big things on Cardano. There's a lot of games on Cardano that have reached kind of like a social media traction, and they're building hype around their release. And we think that games will continue to grow in popularity. And so we're putting a lot of focus into developing games for Cardano as well through Milk Meta. We recently announced a grant for companies that want to build games on Milk Meta. And we also announced a hackathon for DAO development as well to kind of continue feeding into that social infrastructure side of things. And I think that's going to be a good fit for helping grow the Cardano ecosystem and build real use cases for Cardano users.
Okay, yeah, actually, I've seen that. You have the grants. Is there dates on that? I've seen it on Twitter, and I can't remember. Is there dates people need to apply by, or is it an open-ended for if there are people interested in building games?
Yeah, so for the DAO hackathon, we're trying to decide the dates based off the users that have applied so far. So date is pending, but should be probably announced fairly soon. For the gaming grant, I don't think we set a hard deadline. So if you're interested in building games for Cardano or blockchain in general, definitely check out the blog post we put out, and keep in touch for any dates in the future.
Okay, yeah, and like people remember what we talked about with L1s and L2s, layer 2s or sidechains are far better suited for gaming rather than the L1s as well, because if you want to integrate auto saves within a game and the number of saves that's going to come into it, an L1 isn't really going to be suitable for something like that. But when you move to a sidechain, then it can be a lot more suited to the gaming side as well. And I think gaming has a huge potential to bring people into the blockchain industry. Some people go, about it wrong, in my opinion, in that they're trying to bring people in to earn, but you need to build games that people want to play, that earning from the game is the second part of it, that they come in to play the game, and that's how you will bring real adoption in there. And then obviously once they come in and learn about it and learn, you can have your NFTs in game where the assets you buy aren't worthless after you buy them and stuff like that. But you need games that will attract people in first, and hopefully we'll see that over the next few years as well.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So any other areas that will be good to touch on, or have we covered enough?
Yeah, I think we've probably covered enough for this video. I think if somebody's listened all the way through, thanks for your support. You can follow us on social media anytime and join our Discord as well, or you can ask us any questions. As you may have noticed, we try to be very active on all these platforms and engage with the community in every way possible. So definitely, come join and leave your feedback about what we're building.
Great. Yeah, I'll leave all the links down below to yourselves and also some of the proposals that we mentioned as well. And you're very welcome back on the channel anytime, whether it's just to discuss what you're doing yourselves or the current state of Cardano, or even cross-chain as well, because cross-chain will be the future long term. We want Cardano to be a big part of that, but no one chain is going to rule them all. Like people talk about Ethereum killers and stuff like that, but it's going nowhere. It's just going to have less market share, in my opinion. And hopefully Cardano is one of the ones that will have a big share there, along with some of the other L1s we see, and probably some that aren't even created yet as well. So thanks very much, Sebastian. I appreciate your time, and thanks for putting up with my issues at the start of the call as well. And we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, no worries. All right, take care.